For over 4 decades, Malcolm-Jamal Warner walked the tightrope of American celebrity culture with a level of dignity that few in his generation managed to preserve. Best known for his iconic role as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, Warner became a familiar presence in millions of households during the 1980s and 1990s. But long after the lights dimmed on that era of television, Warner evolved into something deeper, an observer, a critic, and eventually a quiet whistleblower of sorts. In recent years, he became more vocal about the inner workings of Hollywood. His podcast, Not All Hood, essays, and public appearances hinted at a man trying to say something urgent without triggering alarms that could endanger his career or, worse, his safety. Warner wasn't just reflecting on past experiences. He was issuing a warning, one that many ignored until it was too late. This is a deeper look at what Malcolm-Jamal Warner was trying to tell us all along. From child star to cultural critic, Warner's evolution. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's journey began in the limelight, but it was his growth outside of it that shaped the man he became. Born in Jersey City, New Jersey in 1970, Warner landed the role of Theo Huxtable at just 14 years old. It was a role that came to define his early career, a lovable, rebellious, yet ultimately responsible teen navigating life in a successful Black American family. The show was groundbreaking, not just for its portrayal of a Black family, but for the way it subtly dismantled stereotypes. Warner, alongside co-stars like Felicia Rashad and Bill Cosby, became household names. But what few knew was the immense pressure child stars endured behind the scenes. From a young age, Warner saw how Hollywood machinery functioned, what it celebrated, what it punished, and what it was willing to sacrifice to preserve its image. In interviews decades later, Warner began hinting that those early years were not all they seemed. While he spoke with respect for his castmates, there were subtle comments about the emotional cost of performance, about being trained to smile on cue, and about how young actors were rarely taught to set boundaries or understand their own trauma. The podcast that spoke volumes, Not All Hood. With Not All Hood, Warner found a voice that had long been suppressed. Unlike traditional celebrity podcasts filled with fluff and nostalgia, his show was often introspective and challenging. Warner tackled subjects like mental health in Black communities, the erasure of Black voices in creative industries, and how Hollywood shaped identity through controlled narratives. In one of the most circulated episodes titled, "The Industry is a Maze Designed to Trap You," Warner stated, "They teach you to be grateful for crumbs and to fear the truth. Because the moment you learn how the system really works, you stop playing your part." The episode didn't name names, but insiders claimed it was a veiled reference to his experiences on The Cosby Show and later rejections he faced when he tried to move beyond his sitcom past. Warner explained how actors are categorized and trapped in lanes from which they are discouraged from deviating. You're either marketable or disposable. That's it. He touched on casting politics, the exploitative nature of fame, and how production companies subtly coerce artists into remaining silent about abuse or discrimination. He referred to contracts as modern muzzles and claimed that public image is bought and sold like a product, and your soul is the currency. Systemic control and manufactured silence. One of Warner's most chilling warnings was about what he called manufactured silence. They don't need to tell you not to talk. They just make it so that talking costs you everything. This idea permeated his later works, poetry, spoken word albums, and interviews. Warner understood that Hollywood had evolved not into a place of creative expression, but a finely tuned machine that protected itself through the strategic deployment of fame and fear. In 2020, during the height of the Black Lives Matter protests, Warner gave a speech at a Los Angeles rally. While others focused on political systems and policing, Warner aimed his words at Hollywood. You all cheer when Black trauma wins an Oscar, but you cancel the actor who dares to say why that trauma exists in the first place. He wasn't just condemning racism. He was shining a light on how media conglomerates tokenize Black pain while silencing the storytellers who tried to talk about it with nuance and authenticity. Warnings. Hidden in plain sight, Warner's artistic messages. From 2018 to 2023, Warner released several spoken word performances and musical collaborations that went largely under the radar of mainstream entertainment media. But within these projects were chilling metaphors, veiled criticisms, and lyrical commentary that now feel eerily prophetic. In his 2021 album, Hiding in the Spotlight, Warner rapped, "I spoke my truth in a whisper, 'cause the mic was wired. And those who shouted got fired, expired, or never hired." He often described himself as a man walking a line between expression and exile. His lyrics spoke of false friends, executives who wore smiles like armor, and contracts written with invisible ink. The metaphors weren't just poetic, they were warnings. Pushing back quietly, the educator and the actor. Malcolm-Jamal Warner never positioned himself as a revolutionary in the classic sense. He didn't lead marches or make inflammatory headlines. Instead, he taught. At workshops, university panels, and through his podcast, he tried to equip the next generation with tools he wished he had. "If I can teach one young artist how to survive without losing themselves, it's worth it." He spoke about therapy, self-respect, and contracts. He urged young actors to read every page before signing, to keep a lawyer on retainer, to say no to opportunities that came with silence as a condition. There's no award worth your peace of mind. Ignored until it was too late. The tragic irony is that Warner's most urgent messages were largely ignored while he was alive. Mainstream platforms rarely amplified his critiques. Industry insiders, even those who agreed with him privately, remained silent to protect their own standing. Only after his sudden death did people revisit his words. His final podcast episodes, old interviews, and lyrics were analyzed with fresh eyes. Fans began to piece together a tapestry of insight, frustration, and subtle resistance that had been years in the making. One viral tweet read, "Malcolm-Jamal Warner wasn't bitter. He was brave, and we didn't listen." Conclusion. The lesson he left behind. Malcolm-Jamal Warner didn't exit the public stage with a viral scandal, a courtroom spectacle, or an explosive memoir detailing every skeleton in the industry's closet. Instead, he departed quietly, almost defiantly, leaving behind something far more profound than gossip or controversy. He left behind a map not drawn with ink or words, but with choices, silences, warnings, and a lifetime of navigating the treacherous terrain of fame without losing his soul. This map wasn't handed to us with grand fanfare. It didn't come in the form of best-selling autobiographies or dramatic interviews meant to scorch the earth. No, it was subtler than that. It was laced into the very fabric of his public life. It was embedded in what he chose not to say, as much as in what he dared to whisper. In an industry that thrives on spectacle, Warner's lesson was in restraint. In a business built on illusion, his was a quiet rebellion of authenticity. A map through the toxic maze. The entertainment industry is seductive. It promises recognition, validation, wealth, and love from millions of strangers. But Warner knew better. Having grown up on one of the most iconic television shows in American history, The Cosby Show, he bore witness to the seductive glamour and the darkness lurking behind the studio lights. He saw how quickly the warmth of the spotlight could turn to heat, how applause could morph into pressure. And more than that, he saw how easily a child could lose themselves in the machinery of fame. But rather than surrender to it, Warner made a choice that few could even recognize, let alone understand. He stepped back, not in retreat, but in quiet protest. He didn't chase the industry's ever-moving spotlight. He chose instead to build a career on his own terms, away from the glare of tabloid headlines and the echo chamber of celebrity culture. His map, then, begins with this. Fame is a trap if you let it define you. A map towards self-preservation. What made Warner's legacy stand apart was not just the wisdom he carried, but the dignity with which he lived. In an industry that often commodifies trauma and pressures celebrities to share their pain for ratings, he resisted. He guarded his personal life like a sacred space, not because he was hiding, but because he understood the cost of visibility. He taught us that self-preservation is not selfish, it's survival. Warner pursued poetry, music, and storytelling that nourished him, even if it didn't top charts or fill arenas. He leaned into creativity, not capitalism, and in doing so, he preserved not just his peace, but his identity. He showed us that it was possible to be in the industry, but not of it, to reject the role of spectacle and instead become a witness, a guide, a truth teller in quiet ways. He once said in an interview, "I'd rather be respected than recognized." That sentence, simple as it seems, is a philosophy, a guiding star, a refusal to barter integrity for relevance, a map back to authenticity. Perhaps most powerfully, Warner modeled a return to authenticity, not just for himself, but for a generation that had grown up watching him. He didn't perform black identity for white comfort. He didn't caricature himself to maintain career momentum. He chose substance over spectacle, truth over trend. His performances in later years, whether in Read Between the Lines, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, or spoken word albums, were layered, introspective, and deeply human. Not designed for viral fame, but for impact. He used his art not to distract, but to heal, reveal, and reflect. In a world addicted to speed and noise, he slowed down and got real. It wasn't always obvious, but Warner was sending signals the whole time. Through the roles he accepted, through the poems he recited, through the dignity of his silence when the rest of the world screamed. His map was a compass of character. He didn't just show us who he was, he reminded us of who we are beneath the layers of image, branding, and digital performance. He showed us the cracks. Malcolm-Jamal Warner didn't blow a whistle or drop a bombshell about the industry's abuses. But make no mistake, he warned us. His life was a quiet but firm resistance to the erasure, exploitation, and tokenization that so many young black actors experience. He showed us where the cracks were, not by pointing fingers, but by walking away from the fault lines and choosing to build something stronger for himself. His silence spoke volumes. It was not passive, it was principled. And in that, he left behind one of the most powerful lessons any artist can offer. You can walk away from what does not nourish you. You can say no. You can stay whole. Are we finally ready to hear him? Now, in the aftermath of his departure, as the world looks back at the legacy of Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the question is no longer about what he said or didn't say. The real question is, were we listening? And more urgently, are we finally ready to hear him now? In an era when fame is increasingly disposable and authenticity is often a brand rather than a truth, Warner's legacy is more vital than ever. His map still exists. For young actors stepping onto their first set, for veterans burned by the system, and for audiences hungry for something real. He didn't ask us to follow blindly. He simply showed us the way, with grace, intention, and courage. The map is there in plain sight. All we have to do now is use it.